In contemporary Japan, Shiro existed as an ordinary office worker, enduring a spiritless existence marked by an unvarying daily regimen. Despite a constant longing for something beyond his current reality, each morning saw him rise, commute the bus to his workplace, and labor until the late hour. Subsequently, he would retreat to his modest, somewhat squalid apartment, where he occupied his remaining house consuming trivial TikTok content. A persistent desire for a more meaningful life finally materialized on evening when he awoke to discover himself suspended within an expansive, featureless white void. Initially disoriented by the lack of visual stimuli, his gaze eventually sharpened, revealing that he was seated before a figure with white hair. This individual, resembling a KPOP idol, asserted divine stature. However, Shiro, not being a susceptible teenager, remained entirely unswayed and unimpressed. Upon Shiro's inquiry about his whereabouts, the self-proclaimed K-pop deity disclosed that Shiro had passed away and was presently situated in a state of purgatory. His essence was on the verge of eternal dissipation. Yet the divine being offered him a choice, proposing to transport him to an alternative existence. This fantastical realm, named Medios, would permit him to re-experience life, assuming an identity he desired. This proposition instantly captivated Shiro, who perceived it as the realization of a long-held fantasy. The divine entity promptly produced a clipboard. He commenced documenting the unique aptitudes he intended to bestow upon Shiro, and before long, their allotted time elapsed. Consequently, Shiro was dispatched to the fantastical domain of Medias. Upon regaining consciousness, he discovered himself situated amidst a dense woodland. Overwhelmed with elation at the prospect of a renewed existence, he promptly rose and began to survey his new surroundings. Before long, he emerged from the forest, discerning a small settlement in the distance that he was eager to investigate. While curious about potential discoveries, he reasoned that appearing with thoughtfulness would likely lead villagers to view him with suspicion. Furthermore, they would probably refuse him sustenance. He then recalled the deity's promise of augmented scouting capabilities. These skills, he remembered, would enable him to locate valuable goods and components, which he could then sell for a substantial profit. He rose with assurance, as they clutched in his grasp. He then loudly commanded the magic to activate, only to find that nothing transpired. A realization that unnerved him, a fleeting thought crossed his mind that the god might have deceived him, but he quickly deduced that he was merely employing an incorrect incantation. The moment he uttered the word share, his scouting magic instantly ignited, pinpointing the whereabouts. It displayed a very gatherable item within the woodland. Acknowledging the immense utility of this power, he proceeded to test another of his bestowed capabilities. This particular skill allowed him to acquire detailed intelligence regarding specific objects. He experimented with a series of verbal commands. Ultimately, the commands can successfully trigger his power, enabling him to glean further details about the nature. He could procure, much like an Jaeger dinner at a buffet, Shiro proceeded to collect every conceivable item. He meticulously assessed their quality and attributes before depositing them into his enchanted satchel. This magical receptacle permitted him to store an unlimited quantity of goods without a dubious recurring charges. With all the necessary provisions securely stored in his carrier, he resolved to proceed towards the village. Just as the sun began its descent below the horizon, Shiro at last arrived at the primary entrance of the settlement. The gate was being watched by a solitary sentinel. Shiro offered a greeting, rousing the man from his slumber, and it became apparent. The inhabitants of this village were uniformly of short stature, rendering Shiro the tallest individual present, which he interpreted as a favorable situation for romantic prospects. The guard inquired if Shiro was a warrior or a knight, yet expressed astonishment upon learning that Shiro's primary occupation was that of a gatherer. a provision not widely encountered in this realm. The guard unbarred the gate for Shiro and instructed him to locate the principal mercantile establishment situated in the heart of the village. This particular shop typically handled such transactions. Shiro stepped into the tranquil village and began traversing its broad thoroughfare. Numerous villagers observed him from a distance, pondering the identity of this unfamiliar visitor. Shiro nonetheless headed directly for the main shop and stepped into the dimly lit establishment. The proprietor behind the counter extended a cordial welcome and inquired about the nature of his wares. Shiro presented a motto of Whetstone, which the shopkeeper promptly took, and instantly identified it as anteater excrement. He declared that they had never before encountered such an immaculate example. He then informed Shiro of his eagerness to purchase it for 5 silver coins. Shiro quickly calculated that 5 silver coins equated to approximately 350 units of currency. A sum, he mused, that man may never accumulate. He promptly consented to the transaction, a response that visibly delighted the shopkeeper, who continued to stroke his face. The merchant then inquired if Shiro possessed any additional items for sale, and Shiro promptly unveiled the entirety of his collected forest bounty. The shopkeeper was utterly astonished by the sheer volume and superior quality of the items, and questioned Shiro why he would choose to find such remarkable goods. In a modest village when the child commands significantly higher prices in any major urban center, Shiro promptly fabricated a story, asserting that he was merely an itinerant collector, journeying and gathering materials throughout various regions of the land. Nevertheless, the shopkeeper discerned his aptitude and offered him a commission to procure precious gemstones from the nearby frigid mountain, a perilous region where he might also encounter monstrous creatures. Shiro felt uncertain about undertaking such a quest at that moment. However, the shopkeeper's pledge of 20 grand for the games left him with no alternative but to agree. Having concluded his business, he bid the shopkeeper adieu and wandered through the village, eventually locating an inn for his accommodation. He secured a comfortable chamber within and, weary from the day's exertions, reclined upon the firm bed, longing for a cleansing bath to wash away the accumulated soil and filth. At that precise moment, a knock sounded at the door, and a young maiden entered the room, bearing a tub brimming with water for his ablution. Shiro, however, had exclusively experienced showers throughout his life. He questioned what he is meant to do with the item, and the girl informs him of his unpleasant odor. She suggested he cleanse himself using a moist cloth, but Shiro then asks if a shower is available. This query bewilders the girl, who explains to Shiro that such facilities are non-existent for commoners, as only nobility enjoys the luxury of a proper bath. Everyone else is expected to wash using just water and a cloth. Shiro finds it incredible that a fundamental necessity like bathing is restricted from ordinary people. But the girl reveals that certain magic exists. These magic possess the ability to use magic to provide baths to others for a fee, and this revelation immediately gives Shiro an insight. He promptly ushers the girl out of the chamber after giving her payment along with a gratuity, then secures the door. Shiro begins honing his magical abilities, ultimately succeeding in casting an incantation that grants him hydrokinetic powers. This newfound power enables him to finally indulge in a much-desired bath. Once refreshed, he collapses into the bed, utterly spent. Though he still yearns for proper shower, he opts to rest to ensure an early beginning to his day. The following morning, he rises at daybreak and heads into the wood, intent on collecting various items. As he forages for fungi, he soon notices an unusual symbol emanating from a nearby thicket. He approaches to investigate, only to discover a decaying body on the earth. Startled, he tumbles backward. After regaining his composure and taking a closer look, he deduces that the individual was a security corps operative, likely perished in combat against some creatures. He contemplates abandoning the facility but ultimately chooses a different course of action. He retrieves the remains and enters them deep underground. He then places his work as a marker for the Dixie's resting place. Having completed this task, he resolves to prepare an evening meal. With those approaching, he first conjures a protective magical shield around himself before settling onto the earth. He positions a cooking vessel over an open flame, and, being far from foolish, he opts to prepare his own evening meal. Utilizing some wild greens he discovered and a portion of meat he possession, he concocts as their front-face components. The resulting dish proves exceptionally delicious, concluding the night on a positive note. The following morning, he proceeds towards the haunted woodland. This forest is densely packed with leafless trees and thick mist, severely impeding visibility even during the day, so he employs his light-based magic to navigate. He ventures into the woods, fully cognizant that this locale is reputed to harbor numerous monstrous creatures. However, as far as his gaze extends, no living beings appear to be present within the forest, so he begins gathering items he deems valuable. Before long, he completes his task in the eye and resolves to depart. He spots a glimmer of light at the exit and hurries towards it, oblivious to the fact that he was hastening directly towards a perilous precipice. He consequently plummets into the chasm and would undoubtedly have perished, had it not been for his swift reflexes, as he employs flight magic to stabilize himself and begins hovering in the air. He gently alights on the ground and exhales a breath of relief, comprehending the narrow escape he just had from death. Resolving to approach situations with greater seriousness and caution henceforth, he once more activates his light magic within the cavern. To his astonishment, the locale is abundant with various types of mineral deposits. He promptly retrieves a small hammer. He then commences extracting the ores from the surrounding rock formation, swiftly filling his satchel with a considerable quantity. He spots an additional ore further away, but an abrupt tremor remains him that he cannot linger for long in this location. Consequently, he rapidly employs his variable speed to shatter the rock, enabling him to acquire the ore more swiftly. To his pleasure, this particular ore professed to be the coveted Misrael ore. This was the very ore the shopkeeper desired, so he promptly stows it away but chooses to venture deeper, despite experiencing another seismic shock. Some time later, he discerns a blue luminescence emanating from the tunnel as terminus, which he pursues, only to discover an aperture. This opening reveals the most intensely blue lake he has ever witnessed situated in its center. He swiftly clambers down the rocks to examine the body of water. The lake's contents are proved to be ester magical water, which he considers the most remarkable discovery he has made to date. He instantly resolved that he must transport some of it back with him, but then a question arises in his mind. He pondered if his flask is sufficiently large to contain the liquid and if it may begin to leak. However, before he can reach a conclusion, a colossal black dragon materializes from the abyssal depths, spewing water in all directions and thoroughly soaking Shiro, while roaring to the band who disturbed its profound slumber. Shiro, however, has witnessed enough extraordinary events that he does not even recoil, instead reverting to his customary demeanor. In his default state as a spiritless corporate employee who habitually deferred to everyone through his sleeve, he instinctively bows before the dragon. He offers an apology for intruding upon its den, but the dragon finds this utterly amusing, having never encountered an individual with such composure. It then inquires about his identity. Shiro responds that he is merely an ordinary human, a claim the dragon vehemently rejects. This disbelief stems from its ability to perceive an enormous quantity of magical energy coursing through Shiro, nearly equivalent to the arcane power within dragons themselves. The dragon then queries Shiro if he might be able to assist Ele, explaining yet only an individual possessing an extraordinary amount of magic could resolve the predicament. It finds itself any, revealing that it possesses an egg that has failed to hatch over an extended period. It asks if Shiro could provide the assistance with this issue, asserting that it would not request such a favor without compensation, and then merely touches the water. From the touched water, numerous large missile or surface, Shiro promptly accepts the proposition. Whereupon the dragon produces other colored egg. It then tosses the egg toward Shiro. Shiro catches the egg, attempting to detect a heartbeat before pondering precisely what he is meant to do within. Suddenly, he realizes that eggs typically require warmth. So, employing his heat-based magic, he infused the shell with warmth. Unexpectedly, the shell began to siphon Shiro's energy, leading him to question if he had been deceived. Fearing his imminent demise, he lost consciousness, only to awaken immersed in comforting warm water. There, a different black-haired K-pop deity materialized, asserting that Shiro's recent actions were causing a disturbance in the world as natural order. Shiro inquired if they had perished. Good the god responded, "Not yet." At that moment, Shiro's awareness fully returned. Upon regaining consciousness in the dark, he employed his light magic, only to discover that the infant dragon has successfully emerged from its teeth. The larger dragon appeared ecstatic as the hatchling found its balance. The dragon expressed gratitude to Shiro for his assistance. It then requested Shiro to bestow a name upon the creature. Rather foolishly, Shiro chose to call the baby dragon Bei, following which the dragon utterly astonished Shiro by declaring that Bei would reside with him from that point forward. Shiro struggled to comprehend that such an extraordinarily rare and magnificent being could belong to him. However, the colossal black dragon reassured him, stating that Shiro was already exceptionally powerful and fully capable of safeguarding the hatchling. With that, the dragon vanished below the water's surface, leaving Shiro and Bei to proceed on their shared adventure. Shiro and Bei soon emerged from the cavern, and by day, those had already settled. Bei began to soar joyfully, as this marked her initial encounter with the world beyond the cave. Shiro, recognizing the impending darkness, opted to establish a camp in the vicinity, and subsequently, he filled a glass with the enchanted water from the lake. The ancient dragon had previously used its magic to link Shiro's magical suction directly to the lake. Since this mystical water was crucial for Bei's development, she swiftly consumed an entire glass. Satan requested a second serving, and Shiro poured a refill. However, Bei graciously offered it back to him, wishing for him to also partake in the nourishing water and experience happiness. Following this, Shiro utilized several magic stones to conjure a protective barrier. This allowed him to bypass the inconvenience of verbally enchanting complete spells. He was aware that magic stones were exceedingly scarce in this realm, having learned this from a book acquired from Shakespeare. Nevertheless, this presented no problem for him, as he possessed the ability to readily produce magic stones. He focused heat magic into his palm, fashioning a magic stone capable of generating a regulated flame for culinary purposes. With the fire noise, Shiro commenced preparing a bath stew, and upon saying it, Bei began to salivate profusely. Shiro, believing she could handle some stew and served her a portion, questioned her about its high temperature, but Bei rapidly consumed it, consequently burning her tongue. This was quite an undragon-like display. Shiro then had to blow on the stew to sufficiently cool air for her consumption. Bei drank until she was both satiated and weary. Shiro found her utterly adorable, but then inquired if they did they miss her father in the slightest. Bei promptly leaped to embrace him, conveying her joy at being in his company. Shiro proceeded to examine her statistics, discovering she was already at rank B and possessed several remarkable innate abilities. He was astonished by this revelation. Nevertheless, he must start regardless of her power. be reminded a child requiring adult supervision. He began to explain to her that, even if she surpassed him in strength, she must avoid reckless action and hide his advice. However, the young dragon was overly dosed. Nan began snoring midway through his admonition. Observing her slumber, Shiro reflected that he had acquired an enduring companion. However, not in the manner he had requested from the cup of God, and pondered if the deity had orchestrated this intentionally. The following morning, Shiro ascended the cliff from which he had fallen the previous day, arriving at the forest. To his astonishment, the woodland appeared entirely transformed. He surmised this was likely another peculiar phenomenon of this world, as he commenced exploring the immediate vicinity. The Shiro resolved to seek out valuable resources, and soon discovered a collection of unfamiliar herbs. Abruptly, Doja experienced an odd tingling sensation, and in the very next instant, became hurtling towards him, clearly terrified of something. Shiro promptly scanned for nearby monsters, and a multitude of indicators materialized on his radar. This was unexpected, given that he had encountered no creatures the day before, leading him to ponder if his deterrence, which had previously warded off monsters, had now dissipated. He harbored no fear of engaging these creatures. Anticipating, had he made acquire valuable material upon their defeat. Nevertheless, the peril was not confined solely to the forest, as a rank rock falcon soon materialized behind him. He was petrified by the sight of the first-looking beast. Shiro, however, found it rather endearing in comparison to the ancient dragon, as he perused the monster as description. He noted that its flesh was palatable. This information alone sufficed as motivation for him to hunt the creature. He first conjured a shot, then launched his pickaxe at the rock falcon. Hailing it instantaneously, Shiro was pleased to have secured an ingredient, but then, would be indicated other monsters emerging from the forest. He spun around to behold wolves with serpentine tail, and resolved to confront them in close quarters. He invoked enchantment spells to render his body more agile and swifter. Consequently, when the initial wolf looked at him, he evaded leaping headlong into the air. Gachen magically hardened his body to an extreme degree and delivered a powerful kick to the first wolf as he instantly ending its life, and the remaining wolves assailed him. But Shiro proved to a swift warfare, deftly evading their assaults and neutralizing them. With a series of potent and rapid kicks, Shiro gathered mates from all the fallen creatures. But shortly thereafter, I say that additional monsters advancing from the forest, they grew exasperated, realizing he couldn't sustain combat indefinitely. Therefore, they opted to assist him, attempting to flee while carrying him. Shiro, however, doubted her capability. Nevertheless, they employed her girl power to hoist him aloft. Shiro chose to aid her by lessening his own mass, casting a spell to make himself lighter. However, he was unprepared for this sudden change and abruptly rocketed Hegel Indursi, DC on take. Sister Ike had to use as standing as usually. Startled, he lets go of Shiro, he screams during his descent, but the trash break his fall, ensuring a safe landing. He immediately swoops down to him, showering his face with legs, much to Shiro as subtle irritation. Upon standing, he notices the V emerged from the woods. Given BS incredible speed, comparable to a Valkyrie jet, Shiro expresses gratitude for her assistance but requests she temper her strength slightly. He explains that he is considerably more delicate than she is. However, Bane, not grasping his complex word, embraces him with such force that she inadvertently cracks a few of his ribs. Following this incident, they recommends their trek towards the village. Shiro then pulls a branch from his backpack and begins to brandish it. He informs BT Hativius is a limb from the fabled Yggdrasil tree, rumored to be the embodiment of the world itself. However, it is presently dormant. They, knowing precisely how to roast the slumbering branch, exhales a pungent cloud of gas. This noxious vapor transforms the small branch into a formidable staff. Shiro is utterly astonished by the sight and questions whether a mere gatherer like himself could even wield such an item, not wanting to be perceived as an ordinary wizard or similar. His contemplation is abruptly cut short by the sound of a thunderous roar. Shiro instantly becomes vigilant, preparing for combat. Yet the bee soars directly towards the source of the noise. Causing Shiro concern, he pursues her, discovering her circling a large tree. The moment he arrives at the tree, he encounters a disheveled and weary elf inquiring if she had been assailed by the creature. The elf then is unattacked, and then, unexpectedly, her stomach emits the very loud roaring sound that had previously alarmed Shiro. The elven woman informs him she hasn't consumed food in 3 days, and Shiro struggles to comprehend that the fearsome roar was in fact originating from her abdomen. She requests water, and he promptly offers her his water bottle. She dries the entire contents in a single gulp. While the water provides some relief, it does not seem to alleviate her profound hunger. Shiro then starts searching for a lunchbox she had taken. He presents the lunchbox to the elven girl. She ravenously consumes its contents, subsequently exclaiming with immense joy that the meal is so delectable. She feels as though she is ascending to heaven. Shiro is quite surprised, having never imagined elves could act in such an unrefined manner. He, however, points out that the food only tastes so good because she has been famished for 3 days. He then questions her how she managed to deplete her provisions so rapidly, especially with a village located relatively close by. She becomes visibly uneasy with his inquiry, prompting Shiro to begin tracing her, remarking that even inexperienced travelers bring a lunchbox on their expeditions. The elf becomes enraged and moves to confront him, but Shiro quickly recoils due to her unpleasant odor. This racist West OCD character marveled in Indian FS will possession of peppermint and service. Use this. Chips. Well, sleep fast, the elf, angered by his comment, retorts that she was unable to clean herself because she had been forced to camp outdoors for an extended period. She promptly prepares to depart, expressing gratitude to Shiro for the meal, but also informing him that it's gay to ridicule someone has just been. With that, she flees, leaving Shiro feeling let down after his initial interaction with an elf. He returns to collecting materials and subsequently leaves the force, but then spots a carriage approaching them. From a distance excluding a meal, which greatly impresses Shiro. Before long, the chariot draws near Anoga. For Shiro to be truly captivated by the sight of a unicorn pulling in the merchant at the reins of the chariot is equally surprised to encounter him. And inquires about his presence. Shiro explains that he is en route to Torumi village. Bonford, the merchant is family 10 pegs from inside the chariot to observe what is outside. The man is gaze falls upon Shiro as staff, known as as a wizard or similar. Shiro nervously responded that he is merely a gatherer, a profession that is, in fact, more esteemed. Given that skilled gathering experts are rather uncommon in this world, the man then extends an invitation for Shiro to travel with them as they two are bound for Torumi village. Shiro questions whether his considerable age and why it would be problematic for reading in the chariot. However, the man assures him it's no issue whatsoever. Shiro accepts the offer and steps into the chariot, discovering that the children find him entertaining. Due to his exceptional height, as Shiro expresses his gratitude to the family for the ride, he dismisses it as a minor favor, explaining that people in this arena habitually assist one another. He exhibits considerable friendliness towards him. Shiro, however, senses they are overly trusting for their own well-being. He then asks him what their reaction would be if he were abandoned. He attempts to frighten the children, but the boy informs him that he couldn't possibly be abandoned since the bell remained silent. Shiro is perplexed, so the woman reveals a bill containing a magic crystal that chimney whenever a malevolent individual is in proximity. Shiro is captivated by this concept and believes he could replicate such a magic crystal himself. Then suddenly Rachel Stanley has yet to introduce himself. Consequently, he shares information about himself with the family, and he, in turn, introduced themselves. The man operating the carriage is named Polum. His wife's name is Elise, and their children are Yunin and Kan. As they exchange pleasantries, Dotbe abruptly begins making sound, and the children observe that the noise is emanating from Shiro's back. They express eagerness to say what he is concealing beneath his coat, and Shiro becomes anxious, explaining that it is a rare creature, and that he might be startled upon seeing it. Eliza reassures him, stating it is not unusual, as adventurers often have monsters accompanying them. This remark instills confidence in Shiro to release B, but only after cautioning her against beating Anyon. The children are instantly charmed, BB's adorable appearance, but the parents are taken aback, given that dragons are exceptionally rare creatures. Polum then inquires if Shiro is a dragon king, considering he possesses a pet dragon, and Shiro begins to explain that Shiro's accidental discovery and subsequent hatching of a dragon egg proved even more astonishing to Polum and Eliza. Given the rarity of dragon kind and the extreme scarcity of dragons, Shiro's curiosity about this legendary warrior was piqued. Drawing from the anime he watched in his previous existence, he concluded that dragon kings were undoubtedly formidable individuals. As those descended, the family chose a spot to make camp. Shiro then conjured light and strategically positioned magic stones around their chosen area. These stones formed a protective barrier, and he assured everyone they would deter monsters, adding that they would provide an alert shield and trouble areas. The family, however, placed their complete faith and be rather than Shiro or his magic stones, leaving him softly disheartened. Subsequently, as Eliza began preparations for dinner, Shiro intervened, requesting to cook himself, and proceeded to retrieve his cooking implements. He then produced ingredients from his magical satchel, further astonishing the family, before commencing to prepare a meal. Using the provision he had gathered earlier that day, he cooked a meal whose flavor utterly captivated everyone, with Polum even shedding tears of joy, having grown weary of his previous deed. Having consumed only great meal throughout their entire journey, Polum declared Shiro to be nothing short of a magician. He proclaimed Shiro the magician of Taste, which elicited laughter from the group, who then enjoyed singing and dancing before retiring for the night. For Shiro, who had always been alone back on Earth, this was a novel experience, and they found immense pleasure in sharing a meal with others. They considered the camaraderie during meals to be truly wonderful. By the time the sun rose, Polum was already diligently cleaning the range and carriage. Meanwhile, the children remained nestled in their slumber, which be comfortably positioned between them. Shiro, though, was already awake and active. He sat on the ground, occupying himself by polishing his scissors until they gleamed. Eliza soon emerged from the chariot as well. After organizing their belongings, she greeted Shiro, remarking that meticulous care for one's tools is a hallmark of a skilled adventurer. Shiro reflected that he had been genuinely enjoying his life recently, and despite acquiring the gatherer class purely by chance, he might possess a natural aptitude for it. Perhaps she was inherently skilled in this role, so she made the preparations to resume their journey, though with a slight change this time. Shiro inquired if we could briefly take control of the arena, to which Polum readily consented. Shortly after, Shiro took his place on the front seat beside Polum. Their journey proceeded without incident, as the unicorn proved to be an exceptionally intelligent creature, responding attentively to Shiro's every instruction. Before long, they fully awakened and promptly flew to Shiro, coming to rest near his feet. Following another effortless couple of hours of travel, they at last caught their initial sight of Turumi village. They soon reached the main gate, where Shiro disembarked, while Palun and his family expressed their gratitude to Ed for the enjoyable time they had shared. Before continuing their way, the guard at the gate appeared to recognize Palun, remarking that he always remembered to share in the spring. This piqued Shiro as interested, prompting him to ask the guard about Palum's profession. The guard explained that Palun and his family, being weavers by trade, follow the warmer climates. Therefore, according to the guard, Palum's appearance in the village signified the imminent arrival of warm spring and summer weather. The guard also mentioned a recent decline in huntable game in the area, which made Shiro understand Palum's profound appreciation for his cooking. He silently thanked the goddess for endowing him with such proficiency as Agatire, since he rarely had to concern himself with acquiring food or wealth. A short time later, he proceeded to meet the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper who had given him the quest. Shiro presented all the spoils she had collected, and the shopkeeper dedicated a considerable amount of time to examining each item individually. Togehe appeared especially captivated beyond particular roche. He soon turned to Shiro, inquiring about the origin of this specific roche, explaining that it was far more than mere mitral ore. It was, in fact, magical mitral ore. Shiro was completely unaware of its significance, but the shopkeeper asserted that this material was the very substance of legend. This revelation finally startled Shiro, who then asked if it was valuable. The shopkeeper endeavored to convey the immense importance of his discovery, informing him that this single stone had an extraordinary concentration of mana, so much so that merely 2 or 3 such stones could effectively substitute all the magic stones in the entire kingdom. Shiro was stunned by this information but unwilling to disclose his unique abilities. He simply stated that he had stumbled upon a big change. The shopkeeper, however, was unconvinced, arguing that even a random find still implied considerable skill, combined with significant good fortune. He advised Shiro that his talents were being underutilized in this location, and suggested he travel to the nearest major city. This city, named Belhan, would offer him opportunity to connect with individuals possessing the financial means to purchase such valuable items. Furthermore, it would allow him to gain a deeper understanding of this world. The shopkeeper also recommended joining a guild, which could furnish him with advanced knowledge. Such knowledge would undoubtedly prove beneficial in his future endeavors. Later that evening, relaxing in his room, Shiro began researching guilds and the life of an adventurer. He realized that becoming an adventurer could indeed be quite advantageous, but he felt no urgency. He concluded that his subsequent course of action would involve traveling to Belhan and joining a guild, but for the time being, he intended to remain in the vicinity of Tormi. Several days elapsed, during which he arranged for the beast he had slain earlier to be prepared and shared among the entire village. Given the scarcity of local game, everyone thoroughly enjoyed the taste of the meat and perhaps, unknowingly, a touch of salmonella. Even the village ruffian seemed to relish the feast, marking the endeavor as a success. We spent a few more days exploring the village. He continued gathering various items, but soon prepared for his departure. An elderly woman presented him with an assortment of seasonings and spices to accompany him on his travels, before expressing that the villagers would have been delighted for him to extend his stay. Since everyone had grown accustomed to his presence, Shiro promised to return someday, but for now, his journey required him to move forward. To ensure he was well prepared, the elderly woman provided him with a collection of Roma materials, knowing the journey to Belcam would be extensive. Anticipating the trip would last nearly a month, she advised him to come back to their village if he ever felt a pang of homesickness. Shiro expressed his gratitude before heading back to his room, where he settled Bidol for 9 Premonition for London the next day. The last of the culinary cells. At that moment, he reflected on the immense kindness the village had shown him thus far and began to ponder. He felt compelled to offer something in return, so he rose from his bed and walked over to the table. There, his gaze fell upon the lantern and the mystical material stone, prompting him to consider the village guard. He thought about how the guard tirelessly stood watch outside, day in and day out, to prevent any monsters from entering the village, inspiring him to use his ingenuity. Utilizing his creativity and the mana from the magic stone, he fussed it with the lantern, crafting a new enchanted artifact. The following morning, as he prepared for departure, the entire village gathered to bid him farewell, and realized this small community had truly become his home, a place he would undoubtedly revisit, so he presented them with the magical item he had created. He explained to the guard that this artifact called Project a magical barrier, safeguarding them from dangerous creatures. The villagers were overwhelmingly thankful for such an extraordinary gift, but the shopkeeper took the item into his hands. He meticulously examined it before inquiring if Shiro had used the magical material stone for its creation. He then opened the bottom and retrieved it, discovering the stone precisely where he expected, but before he called object and urged Shiro to take the stone with him. Shiro quickly departed, instructing the shopkeeper to keep it for the village's benefit, as the entire community waved him all. His journey finally commenced atop the morning air, invigorating his face as he traversed the expansive fields. While enjoying the beautiful day, he suddenly encountered an enormous crab monster, which initially terrified him completely. However, he decided to inspect the creature's statistics, discovering it was a high-ranked monster, implying it should pose an insurmountable challenge. He also noted that the crab was reportedly edible, which made his mouth water. He informed Betty that the crab meat was exceptionally delicious, then braced himself for the confrontation, using his magic to fortify his body. But before he could even formulate an attack, he launched its supersonic blast, instantly incapacitating the monster. Before he could begin butchering it. However, two more crabs emerged around him, moving laterally, prompting him to devise a strategy. He theorized that the crabs could only move sideways, a weakness he could exploit, but to his dismay, the crabs charged directly at him without warning, leaving no time to evade the assault, making him wonder if this was the end of his adventure. Fortunately, B proved far more capable than him, seizing him by the collar and hoisting him into the air. As a result, the two crabs violently collided with each other, both perishing instantly, but the peril had not yet subsided. The first crab then revived and began to pursue him once more. Shiro, however, was better prepared this time. He swiftly drew his staff and delivered a powerful blow, instantly dispatching the monster. That evening, they prepared for a substantial dinner. Shiro used his enchantment to reinforce his hand, employing it to sever the crab leg before placing them all into a pot and adding water. Along with various pages to concoct Eric Stemmen's coconut, they cooked at open dishes and for the fastest perfect in the world. Immensely enjoying the flavors, Shiro felt a sense of satisfaction as he expressed to be how wonderful he felt, and how eager he was for them to explore more, allowing them to experience a greater variety of tastes this incredible world of air. Apparently, the villagers had been mistaken, as he was quite certain it did not take him a month to reach the city of Bilkem, which was a vast, protected fortress, bordered on sea the blue water. He joined a queue of other commoners to gain entry into the city. Realizing he might draw unwanted attention, he used his magic to make his magical bag appear ordinary and even instructed B to remain hidden for a while. Soon, he was summoned by the immigration department, where they inspected his luggage and identification to ensure he was not there to cause a disruption. Their checks seemed rather lenient, as they merely employed a basic magical scan to ascertain FV heart and criminal history. While the woman examined his back, finding nothing unusual, Shiro was curious about how his statistics appeared to others. But he concluded they must seem normal, as the god had ensured they would they conspicuously stand out. The official informant he appeared to be cleared, but noted he possessed a peculiar blessing of the dragon, which puzzled them. Shiro decided to reveal the truth, and presented it to them, who were immediately captivated by its cuteness. However, the text again instructed him to attach attack to the dragon, stating they couldn't have unidentified Nukas flying around. Shiro used a bracelet they possessed, and fastened it around Best, which completed their immigration process, and they were welcomed into the city. He was instantly captivated by the vibrant city, where people of all races moved purposefully towards their destinations, engaging in activities like purchasing food, acquiring armor, and attending training halls. He wandered in a way. Before spotting the jewel, hard in the distance, he made his way directly to the adventurers' guild and entered the hall, discovering a magnificent space, filled with diverse warriors and companions. Suddenly, he was approached by Aram, a bunny girl senpai who greeted him to the guild, and inquired if he wished to register himself there. Shiro nodded and followed her to the counter, where she recorded all his details, and asked if he had to combat at any. She learned by his descriptions was in it. His past battles included an unusual avian creature, several serpentine wolves, and numerous colossal crustaceans. Arya appeared perplexed, questioning the veracity of his claim, prompting the seemingly foolish man to delve into his satchel. From it, he produced a well-disguised scrap, which he then dropped onto the table, causing it to splinter from the impact. Startled, Arya fled outdoors as the guild members converged, curious about the commotion. Among them, a Biaskin individual. This fury implied his unequal ability to assess Shiro, then advised Arya to relax, stating Shiro posed no apparent threat. Shiro expressed slight bewilderment, but the Biaskin clarified that he possessed a unique power to discern individuals' true intentions. He elaborated time arid aura would signify malicious intent, but since Shiro's aura was blue, he was deemed harmless. Shiro felt relieved, yet the Fury Giant inquired about his reason for carrying a dead crab. Shiro responded that he intended to consume a day, as discarding edible crab meat would be foolish. A revelation that shocked the guild members. Apparently, crabs were not a common food source in this realm, but the guild proved more tolerant and political racism. Consequently, they permitted him to proceed as he wished, and the Fury instructed Ariel to finalize his enrollment. The Fury then asked Shiro if he had any companion, though when Shiro stated his sole partner was currently his dragon bear. This revelation astonished the observers, as dragons were rarely seen, and for a gathering, an already uncommon profession to possess such an exceptionally rare creature seemed nearly inconceivable. Yet Shiro remained. He instantly became the focal point, with several guilds extending invitations for him to join their groups. Arya opted to lead him to an adjacent chamber for a private discussion. Though Shiro had anticipated a different kind of handy gesture. Instead, he received an official guild stamp on his application, confirming his status as a legitimate adventurer, thus completing his registration. Arya then presented him with a copper wristband, signifying his F-rank, the mandatory starting level for all new recruits. Shiro, however, was unconcerned as he began envisioning the incredible escapades awaiting him. And that concludes this video. Please remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.